Hey everyone, I'm that mediocre streamer and welcome back to Dirt Rally for another fact finding video. In this video, I'm going to be delving a little more in depth into setting up your car and finding out how much of a difference it makes to get a good setup on your cars, as well as the time gains or losses that can be made from it. The main questions we're going to be answering here are as follows. What is a car setup is the main one. Then we shall move on to find out what types of car setups are best suited to which surfaces and conditions. Following that, we'll find out if we can make up time or not from a default setup, and then finally we'll put a default setup car and a prepared setup car head to head on the same stage to find out which is best. So let's not waste any more time and get straight into it. So first of all then, what do we mean when we say we are setting up a car? Well, this applies to not only to all disciplines of motorsport, but to also general everyday driving as well. Car setup is really important because it helps a driver better prepare a car for certain roads and conditions. For example, you wouldn't want to use totally slick racing tyres on sheet ice and snow, as that would not provide the most optimum levels of grip and handling for that type of condition. So, tyres is one aspect of it, but on top of that, the teams and drivers also have to worry about many other things such as the balance and bias of brakes, suspension travel and ride height of the suspension, the ratio of the gearbox, setting up of the aero package and the steering response too. We'll break this down into smaller chunks to make this a little easier to come to terms with. So, first of all then, the cars in a rally have to be set up for the conditions of the stages on which they're competing. So choosing the right tyre pattern and tyre compound is a very important aspect to help the drivers gain and maintain optimal grip levels in the conditions. Choosing a hard compound tyre, for example, would help the tread last longer, but can cost in terms of grip during the early stages of that tyre's life. Conversely, equipping a soft compound tyre would give an excellent short-term grip at a cost of tread patterns wearing out more quickly. So for the most part, it is usually advisable to select a medium compound tyre, as that way it wouldn't cost you grip and the tyre won't wear out as quickly. So with the right boots chosen for your car, the next part of the equation concerns brake strength, brake bias and brake balance, including the amount of pressure going through the handbrake system. As far as brake pressure goes, too much can cause the pads to wear out either too quickly or unevenly, and too little, for obvious reasons, can prevent the car being able to slow down effectively on any given surface. So in this example, we wouldn't apply asphalt levels of braking pressure to a car that is rallying on gravel, as the car may tend to lock up too much, which is not what you want on a loose surface, as there would be a loss of understeer in this case. Another aspect of setting up brakes correctly concerns brake bias or brake balance. For the untrained, what this basically means is which end of the car needs more braking force, and it is critical to a good setup on any surface. There is, however, one exception to this, which is if your car is front-wheel drive and your brake bias is set too far forward on gravel, this can produce too much understeer and prevent you being able to turn in as much as would be necessary. So in this case only, I would personally consider it advisable to balance your brakes slightly more towards the rear so it can more easily slide on the loose. Conversely, giving a rear-wheel drive car more forward brake bias means that the car should stay slightly more in a straight line, even through turns. There's also the matter of handbrake pressure too. This is mainly a concern for asphalt stages, but can also be applied for gravel rallies too. However, asphalt setup is critical for the handbrake, as too little pressure won't lock the wheels enough to get the car turned effectively around those tight hairpin corners. That particular aspect of setup isn't as critical for a car on gravel, although it can still be used sometimes on loose surfaces. The next and most critically important aspect of car setup, in my opinion, power distribution and also gearbox setups. Modern rallying and most motorsports involving four-wheel drive vehicles, the power from the engine is delivered to the wheels by a gearbox and a system known as differentials, which I'll cover in a little while. These are usually set up in varying ways depending on the application, so first we should take a look at the gearbox setup. In a rally, the difference between winning and losing can sometimes be as close as 1/1000th of a second, and so the competition can often be this tight. So power delivery is critical in this particular respect. The gear ratio of a car is used to determine how much speed or how much acceleration one single gear can provide. No two gears can share the same ratio, and the wrong gearing ratio can be a detriment to a car gaining or losing speed or acceleration. Set a gear with a high ratio and it will reach the maximum possible speed in that gear before you change, but that will come at a cost of acceleration. Conversely, if you set a car with too low a ratio, it will accelerate really quickly, but the top speed of that gear will often be much lower. So it's always advisable to find a sensible middle ground between speed and acceleration, as this can help you not only launch a car into the stage, but can also be advantageous to pulling away from those tighter corners more quickly. On tight and twisty rallies like Greece, Monaco, various ones like that. Gearboxes are usually set up with a short ratio to aid corner pull away and acceleration. And on fast flowing rallies such as Finland, Germany and Spain, they're set up with a longer ratio for greater speed, but a mid to long final drive ratio to aid the acceleration. A final drive ratio basically determines just how much power you can get from the car in between changes. So that's covered the gearbox then, but I mentioned something there called a differential as well. Differential or prop shaft is a system used to transfer the useful power of a car from the engine through the gearbox via these prop shafts and transfer boxes to the wheels. But how does it do that? Well, there are a few factors such as the different ramp values as well as the locking strength. The easiest way to explain this is that the differential can either be set up as a stiff or loose differential or a weak or strong differential. A weak or loose rear differential means that the locking force in the rear is low. This means that when you're cornering, the inside tyre will spin slower than the outside in order to avoid traction loss and oversteer. This can help a slower driver gain time as they're not spinning the tyres, but a stronger driver will be able to control the slide and come out of the corner with more speed with a stiffer rear end. A stiff or strong rear end means that the locking force is quick. The stronger the rear end, the faster the differential will lock together. This means that the tyres will be spinning around the same rate, which can force oversteer, and with the right amount of throttle control can control your slide so that you can come out of your corners with good straight line speed. For the front differential, the opposite is generally recommended. Mechanics of strong versus weak differentials are the same in the sense that one locks faster than the other, but the effects are opposing. So with a strong front differential, you'll spin both front tyres, which will drag the front of the car wide, resulting in understeer. But with a weak front differential, the inside tyre will spin slower and grab traction, which should help to pull the car through the corner instead of dragging it wide. The stiffness of differentials is of course variable, and the power delivery split of most cars is usually controlled through this system. There are many different types of differentials in the world of motorsport, and so knowing which type is in the car you're driving is advantageous to getting the best from that particular car. So now we've covered gearbox and differentials, the final part to call into question are wheel camber and toe angles, suspension travel, suspension stiffness and ride height. Main things to change here are mostly suspension stiffness and ride height, but bear in mind there is a marked difference in spring rates for front wheel drive versus rear wheel drive vehicles. For example, if you're in a vehicle that has front wheel drive, you want a softer front end because you really want to avoid tyre spin, whereas with rear wheel drive you want to set the suspension with a stiff front end as you're looking for the weight to transfer only enough to cause the tyres to dig when turning, not spinning. For four-wheel drive vehicles, it's important to balance the suspension setup between the two, as too much travel and spring stiffness at one particular end of the car can still cause the effect of under or oversteer if you set it up inconsistently. Moving on then to ride height, it's important to set up the car in relation to the surface in which is most common on that particular rally. For instance, you wouldn't want to give the car an ultra-low ride height for a bumpy gravel rally with lots of rocks, much in the same way that you wouldn't want super stiff suspension in this case, as the car will be unable to absorb impacts as well as if it were set up with more spring travel and a slightly higher travel and ride height. Most of you will probably notice then that the one of the areas of the car that I've missed in this video is the setup of ballast and aerodynamics. The reason for this is that Dirt Rally and Dirt Rally 2 don't really give players the opportunity to adjust these pieces, as on most rally cars the aero package is one set design and not really changeable. Ballast is an addition or removal of weight from a car, and that doesn't really count for anything in rallying, as most of the vehicle's overall weight has been honed and reduced in the actual construction of the car. So then, that's about covered off setup basics and should hopefully arm you with enough information to allow you to be able to hone a setup as close to perfection as you can achieve to get as much as you can out of your car. So now we move on to the next question, and that is the default setup in Dirt Rally or Dirt Rally 2 quicker under any circumstances? To find out the answer to this, I devised a simple control test where I did 2 runs in the same shakedown stage even, using the default setup for the first run and the prepared setup made by myself for the second one. Once again, I'm back at Kohtijärvi in Finland with the 2001 Impreza WRC, and once again, I'm using just the first 2 kilometers of this stage for the test. The setup for each run is shown just below the video, and the telemetry for each on the recorded on screen. As this is a stage that I do know quite well, in both runs I just put my foot to the floor and went for it, hoping not to crash as I proceeded through. This is a lovely little section of the road as it features the famous Kakaristo hairpin from the Onimpoja stage in Rally Finland in real life. The exit speed from this hairpin and the line through it is critical as it sets you up for the following fast section of the stage. Beyond the high speed section, the stage goes into a couple of small jumps before breaking down for the final 90 right corner, and then a flat out sprint to the finish. But you can clearly see that with an adequate and decent prepared setup, the car with the basic setup stands no chance to be fast here and comes home in a time of 1 minute 3.38 seconds, whereas the car that had been prepared before the run came home with a 59.83 second time. So from what we can see then, this has shown that in most circumstances it is more advisable to prepare your car for the event before the stages begin and conduct as many shakedown tests as you need to be confident in the setup before you tackle the stages. Coming up next then, we have a side-by-side comparison of the difference between a stock setup and a tuned setup on the Subaru Impreza 555 in Germany. The default setup of this car was terribly loose, long gear ratios and a heavy rear brake bias meant that it acted much more like it was set up for gravel than it was for asphalt. I'll be quiet during this one so you have a chance to look through it.
Caution, turn open hairpin right, don't cut, down, rocks on exit. 130 through dip. Left 5. And to turn right 2, keep in bad camber. 130 past junction. Turn square left down, through gate, 80. Right 6. And left 6, 170. Caution, turn left 4, don't cut. 100 up, crest. 150. Caution, turn right 4, don't cut. Crest, 250 through dip. Caution, braking, turn square right, don't cut. Rocks inside and on exit. Into turn left 3, don't cut. Bank on exit. Left 6, 150. Double caution, left 6, immediate turn, square right, don't cut. 100, crest. Right 6, bump over junction. 100, jump maybe, 100. Caution braking, hairpin right, tight, round bailed. Left 6, right 6, 60 dip. Left 5 past junction. Care right 4, don't cut. Into care, left 5 rocks outside, past junction. Right 6 long, 80. Left 5 half long. Right 6 past junction. 80 past junction. Caution, turn left 1, don't cut. And turn left 1 over crest, don't cut. 300. Left 6, 200 through dip. Keep mid over big jump, 200. Caution right 5 over crest, jump maybe, deceptive. Braking, turn square right, don't cut, care rocks on exit. Turn right 1, don't cut, care rocks on exit. 100 past junction. 80 crest. Left 6 past junction, 150. Right 5, don't cut past junction. Left 5 past junction, 100 to finish.
So this time round, what have we learned then? Well, first, I hope I provided you with enough information to allow you to adequately set up any car you drive in either Dirt Rally or Dirt Rally 2, and giving you enough information as to why certain parameters are better on certain surfaces. Armed with this information, I really hope it can help you get out there and really wipe the floor with some of the stages in both Dirt Rally and Dirt Rally 2.0. So with that in mind, if you enjoyed the video, please be sure to give it a like, don't forget to comment and provide feedback. Also, please subscribe if you are new and enjoyed the video, as there will be a lot more coming soon from both Dirt Rally and Dirt Rally 2.0 in the Fact Finding series. Catch me live on Twitch at the link in the description below, and I will see you next time. Thanks for watching and take care.